Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 121 of Cameron's Nostalgia Podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Strickland, and today I have with me Aaron Romo. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Now
Good, good.
for now for any of the guys who don't know, Aaron's a animator who worked on Francesco's Friendly World and Jasper the Mule, Epic Mickey, Villain's Revenge, Proud Family, Little Dogs on Prairie, Anastasia, the Trick cereal commercial, the PSA announcement for propane, Weird Al's Adventures of Fat Man, and many more. So yeah.
hmm You did your research there. A few of those I even forgot about.
Okay. So welcome to the show, Aaron.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
It's great to have you here. So let's begin our first question.
Mhm.
How did you get interested in animation?
Well, it has always been part of my life. I think my first memory is actually seeing Walt Disney's Fantasia in the theater with my mom and dad. And I grew up with Disney on the television and Bugs Bunny cartoons, and I just ate that stuff up. So it was always part of my life, and it was always a goal. Once I realized that people actually did this, people actually drew these characters and kind of lived through these characters on paper. It had always been my goal. I like comics as well, but from a very, very early age, I was just enamored with animation.
Nice. So what was your first animation gig?
It was actually Francesco's Friendly World. I was just out of high school, and I had a side interest in music, and I was working at a music store that sold guitars and keyboards and things. And uh, a guy named Josh came in to the store to buy some guitar strings, and we started talking. And he worked at that studio that worked on Francesco's Friendly World. It was called Heart of Texas Productions, right there in Austin, Texas. And he invited me to come on by, and he would show me some things to kind of start working with animation. And eventually, he started giving me little bits to do as a freelance artist there, and they just kind of like took me into the fold. So yeah, the first thing I really worked on was that. But yes, you mentioned there were a few commercial pieces. I think the first thing I ever actually did at Heart of Texas Productions was a commercial, and it was for, oh gosh, I forgot where it was. It was for a very small country, and they were doing a public service announcement, a PSA, for uh for some housing infrastructure. As funny as that sounds, there are these things called Lottie stones, and they're basically these stones that lift your house for when there are flooding seasons. And somehow they got contracted to do a commercial, a PSA, for this country to promote the Lottie stones for people's houses. And so I got to do just very small bits of animation of things like, dust clearing, so you could see the nice new houses on the stones and things like that. They started me off very, very slowly, but it was very smart because I was able to gain some knowledge on how animation is done and a little bit of confidence in my ability to actually do it. And also at the same time to build up your speed. As an animator, you're expected to do so much, in a period of time, and you very quickly realize that people are not going to pay you to have fun. People are paying you to do something that really works, looks really nice, and you can do it at a reasonable pace. So it was a really great introduction to all of those things that go into the professional world of animation.
Nice.
Mhm.
So, what was it like working on Francesco's Friendly World?
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Again, I met a lot of really good people there. And I thought that the subject matter was really, really cute. I loved the voice acting in it, and I thought the character design was a lot of fun. And so over the next few years, I got to see those characters go from just, the model sheets to the storyboards to the rough animation to the cleanup animation, the color, and then to the final print. So it was really neat. You kind of grow with those characters after a while. You really become the characters kind of become part of you, almost like family members and friends, and even the animal characters kind of become, you get that sensitivity that they're your pals, they're your friends, pets, those kind of things. Armando and Beatrice and all the rest of them, they stop being drawings and they start becoming characters. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a great first start. It was a great thing to start on.
And do you have behind the scenes footage or photos of Francesco's Friendly World?
Do I have behind the scenes footage? I do have bits and pieces of it. What's interesting is I got to see a lot of different parts of the studio. And one of the things that they do for animation, for anyone that may not know, is that animation is checked throughout the process. So as you are assigned one of the scenes to work on, the first thing you do is a very, very rough pass. And what that means is you're just making sure that the shapes of the character, let's say it's Leopold, the little bear character, if you're animating him, the first pass is really just his shapes and making sure that those shapes are moving the way you want them to in the scene. And to make sure that happens is once you get those first drawings moving, you take them to a camera room and you get them shot and timed correctly. And you just watch those shapes. Are they moving the way they're supposed to? And if they do, then you go on and you build on that and you add more details to the scene and then you get it shot again. And if those details and everything are working, well, then you finish the rough drawings, you finish it up entirely, and you get it shot again. And if it's still working, then they can take it into what is called cleanup animation, which makes all the drawings very pretty. And those are essentially the drawings that you see in the final are the cleanup drawings. So in that process of doing that, a good portion of the time I was working the camera. And what we would do is all the animators would turn their scenes into me, and I would shoot their scenes based on the timing sheet included. So I got a lot of footage of animators animating those scenes in all those different states. And so somewhere I have a box of a lot of videos, VHS tapes is what where they were recorded on. I have a lot of those tapes of people's rough passes, and I need to find those. I have a lot of things that I've collected over the years, a lot of the model sheets which show you how to draw the characters. I have a lot of pose sheets, and those are basically collections of poses that work really well with the characters. So if you have like Armando the wolf, there'll be a page that shows you how he looks when he's frustrated and how he looks when he's surprised and how he looks when he's happy. And that way animators can kind of look at those and give them an idea of the ideal look for those characters. So if they have a scene where Armando needs to be surprised or happy, they can look at those pages and say, "Oh, okay, I see what works with his happy expression, and I can kind of work with that." So yeah, I've got a lot of stuff somewhere in a box somewhere of a lot of the production stuff from that series.
Will you show it to me
I will try to find it. If I find some, I will pass it on to you. Absolutely. Absolutely.
on Outlook?
On what? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we'll stay connected, and if I find that stuff, I will send you some stuff somehow. Absolutely.
And I have a VHS copy of Francesco's Friendly World,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
including this one.
Oh, look at that. See, I was telling you earlier that I never saw the actual final. That is awesome. The Last Stone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Gosh, that's so great. That's so great. I did get you'd mentioned and I'd forgotten about it, Little Dogs on the Prairie. I do think I have copies of that, but even then I had to kind of search them out on my own at at a Christian bookstore. But that's great that you've got that. That's really cool. I love that. I love seeing that in its final form.
My previous guest, Earl Fisher, was Luigi,
Oh, okay. The voice of? That's great.
and he was Booker T. Bookworm on Barney and Friends.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a lot of those voice actors, they tend to do quite a few different parts from different series, and that's really cool. I didn't know that he also did that character. That's neat.
And videotape appeared on VCR Party Live.
Oh, okay. Nice. That's really great. I love to see that it got out there and people actually know about it. That's really rewarding to know that this work does get seen because it's amazing how much work goes into it, and it's amazing to see how much love was put into it. I think every one of the animators there really felt for the characters, and you could see that they were doing their most to make those characters come to life. I think it was a really loving production all in all. You could really tell. So I'm so pleased to see it in its form, its final form, and I'm so pleased to know that people actually enjoyed it.
Yes.
That's great.
That was for the Film Footage Fest.
Okay. Okay. Very good. I love that. I love that it's getting out and people know about it.
Okay. So, you worked for the yogurt commercial.
For the what commercial?
Yogurt.
The ogre?
No,
Oh,
yogurt.
I'm sorry. I'm having a problem. Can you describe it?
Yogurt.
Oh, the yogurt commercial. I'm so sorry. You were saying it just fine, and I was completely not remembering. Yes, that Danish yogurt commercial. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. What's really so a lot of times I've taught cartooning and I've taught fundamentals of animation, and I often say that with really, well thought out animation, you really don't have a lot of meaningless drawings in a scene. And that yogurt commercial was a lot of fun because those characters are constantly doing something, and they had such a great pace to it that you really had a lot of fun with the drawings. It's a lot like the Tricks commercials. Those, if you really watch, if you really watch the Tricks Rabbit, he's really going from such frenetic posing to posing that it keeps him alive the whole time. And that yogurt commercial was fun in that way because those characters were just constantly moving and doing, and it makes it a really fun experience to animate things like that. But yeah, the yogurt commercial. Yes, absolutely. That was a lot of fun.
And the Trix Rabbit appeared on the Magic Secrets video in puppet form.
Yes. Well, he's been around for so long. They've played around with him so much. He's been in puppet form, he's been in hand-drawn animation, he's been in 3D. I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere out there he hasn't been done in stop motion. He's been around for so long, for generations. He's absolutely one of my favorite characters. He is made for animation with those great long expressive arms, those eyebrows that float above his head, those ears that can do all kinds of fun things to help with his expressions. He's a wonderful, wonderful character. He's one of my absolute favorites.
And he appeared with the magician Dan Witkowski.
Oh, really? Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm sure there is a book worth of material on the Tricks Rabbit. Like you could probably write a very big book collecting all the things he's done, all the places he's been featured. I can't even imagine how many cereal toys he's been in. Like I can't imagine all the material he's covered, you know. I'm surprised they haven't even they may have tried to pitch him as a series. I'm surprised there hasn't been a trick series uh, come up or anything like that, or have him show up in a movie of some kind, the Rescue Rangers movie, or one of those kind of things where I'm surprised he hasn't even made a cameo in something. He's so big. He's such a famous character.
Yes. What was it like working on Jasper the Mule?
Jesper the Mule was a lot of fun. I was hired on that because the the creator of Jasper the Mule was actually a horse and mule owner, and I believe she had the only show mules. They have show horses, and I believe she was the only owner of show mules around. And it started as a series of books. And it got popular enough that she decided to do a DVD series of based on those books. And the reason I was hired is that since she was a horse and mule expert, even though these were cartoon characters, they wanted to make sure that the animals moved correctly. And animating a four-legged creature of any kind, a dog, a horse, a mule, a cat, anything like that, it requires some understanding of how animals move, especially four-legged animals. So I was hired on that because when someone asked for the characters to trot or to gallop or to canter or whatever they're doing, I was able to do that correctly. But that series was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and it actually has one of my favorite personal scenes that I've ever animated in it. And I'll share that with you. I'll make it quick. She would the creator, she was very good at sending us reference footage. So if she wanted Jasper doing a certain thing, she would send us footage of a real mule doing that, so we could kind of take notes and look at it and make sure that we did animate the right thing. So I animated the scene where Kylie, the main girl character, actually gets on Jasper, and apparently the way that you get on a mule is not the same as the way you get on a horse. So she sent me all this reference footage of how someone mounts a mule correctly. And they sent it from all these different angles so I could see how you put the hands on the neck, you put your foot in the stirrup, the bouncing to get up onto the mule, all that stuff. They sent me reference footage, all those different angles. And as I'm taking notes of how to do this, the last bit of footage shows the female rider reaching down and patting Jasper on the neck. And I thought that was so lovely. And so I raced into the director's office and I showed him the footage and I said, "Can you give me just this much more time in the scene so I can animate Kylie doing that, reaching down and petting him?" And he loved the idea and gave me the amount of time in that scene to do it. So I was really proud of that because as an animator, you realize that some scenes are really just mechanical movement. Sometimes you really just need a character to go from this position to that position, and you really don't have to add a whole lot of emotion to it because it's just something that needs to happen in the story. But other times there are moments where you realize that it can be very special and it can be a lovely little moment. And that was one of those times where I realized that that scene could go from just being mechanical movement of her getting on a mule to a real connection between her and Jasper. So I really was always proud of that scene because it was definitely finding a special little connection between those two characters, a special little moment that you can take it from something that's a very boring thing to something really nice and sweet. But it was a lot of fun working on that series. It was a lot of fun. I spent about a year and a half, maybe a little bit more on that series. And it was the same way as Francesco's Friendly World. After that time, you get to know those characters and they stop feel like drawings and they start feeling more like people that you know, characters that you know. And that's when it becomes special. When you stop thinking of them as drawings and you start thinking of them as characters, as people, the same way you would think of it as a friend.
And what was it like working on Epic Mickey?
Epic Mickey, that was a blast. And the reason is that I've worked with Disney off and on a few different projects. But the thing is that Disney animators very rarely get to work on Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Goofy. They're always on to something else and something new, and you rarely get a chance to work on those classic characters. So that was an absolute blast for me because Mickey is one of my absolute favorites, and I understand the everyman charm in Mickey. I get who he is, and to be able to work on those classic characters is such a gift. Because again, as a Disney animator, you're onto whatever that project is, and that project 99% of the time tends to be something new or something newly realized, and you rarely get a chance to animate Mickey, and that was great. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I got to do a lot of the story narration that happens during the game. I believe that I animated every single one of the Nintendo wand tutorials that had kind of a stick figure Mickey. And then I also animated all of the end credits that happen in the game. So I got to do quite a few different things on that. And that was a blast. I loved the stick figure Mickey stuff. It was so much fun because you could just have so much fun with him. There's a period in time where he just becomes flat and falls over like he was a cardboard cutout and things. There was a lot of creativity. And Warren Spector, who was the pushing force behind that entire game. He was really, really fun to work with. He was very personable. He was very kind, and I believe he showed such a passion for that game. I think he looked at every scene that every animator worked on, and you rarely see that with a director. They usually have someone else to kind of approve these shots and approve these drawings and things. But I would get notes back from him all the time. He'd just say, "Great scene, well done," and it was really nice to see that he had so much devotion and was putting so much attention into everything in that game. It was a lot of fun and very rewarding for that reason.
And what was it like working on Villain's Revenge?
Villain's Revenge was the first time I ever got to work on something with the title of animator. Because for other people, for anyone that doesn't know, when you learn animation, the first thing you are taught is how to in between, and in betweens are pretty much just the remaining drawings in a scene that just need to fill it out for the smoothness. From that, they bump you to an assistant animator. An assistant is someone who follows up the actual animator. And an assistant does a lot of things like tightening up the drawings, making them flow better. They add a lot of secondary action, like if you're moving this way and hair follows behind, or if you have ears or a tail, a lot of times the assistant will go in and add that. But the animator is the one that actually puts down the most important drawings, and they make sure that everything moves correctly before the assistant and the in-betweener do anything with the scene. And so, yeah, that was the first time I worked as an animator with that title. And my first scene was animating Captain Hook and Peter Pan fighting on the mast of a ship. And that was a blast. And one thing for any aspiring animator out there, sometimes the last thing you do is you draw it. Sometimes that's the last thing you do. And what I mean by that is you can do just your drawings to kind of figure out what you want to do. You can watch other people doing it. You can do it yourself. You can stand up and actually do that action. There are a lot of things you can do to kind of really understand what you're about to draw before you sit down and try to draw it. And I think a lot of times when people get frustrated with their drawings or their animation, it's because they haven't really invested that time into figuring out what they really want to put down on the paper. So for that scene, I was assigned that scene while I was working on another scene as an assistant. And I flipped through it and I saw that I was going to be animating Captain Hook and Peter Pan. And so the first thing I did was I went to a toy store nearby and I bought two really cheap plastic swords and I brought them back to the studio. And then the animator that I shared an office with, he and I just stood up and we started sword fighting. And every time we did something really neat, I kind of paused for a moment and made a quick little note of that, made a little gesture drawing of it. And then we get back to fighting again and we'd say, okay, what about if you do this and I do that and I block and I come around this way? And every time I came up with something really neat, I'd make another little gesture drawing, a little note. And so by the time I actually sat down to animate that scene, I had figured out so many great poses to use for it that I'd kind of had done my homework. And that was a lot of fun. But yeah, that was another example of working on a lot of really fun characters that people don't usually get to touch because it was all based on a lot of classic characters. I got to animate Alice from Alice in Wonderland. Again, Captain Hook and Peter Pan. I got to animate Dumbo. So there was a lot of experience animating characters that even Disney animators don't get to touch a lot because, again, they're on to other things. So that was a blast. It was a big chapter in my life.
And what was it like working on Proud Family?
Proud Family was also a really, really fun time. That was a production done by Bruce Smith, who had earlier done Bebe's Kids, the movie. And he, at that point, was a Disney animator. He's also famous for, oh gosh, he animated Pacha from The Emperor's New Groove. He animated Kerchak, the main gorilla from Tarzan. Great animator, great designer, and that was a blast. I always loved his work. I always loved his design work, and that was so much fun because that was a freelance experience where basically they said, we'll give you as much work as you want. And so I just ate it up. I just kept animating and animating, and they just kept sending me more work. And it was so much fun because on that side of things, they were brand new characters. I was actually working on some of the first ever episodes, what you would call the pilot episodes. And so that was a great experience because those he makes characters that are a little bit like the Trix Rabbit. They're a lot of fun to animate. They're allowed to be very expressive. They have a lot of great body language. You know, you can really make those shoulders really shrug, and you can really throw those arms out into straight lines, and their faces can make these really great faces, and they're designed for that. They're made for that. He knows how to design for a lot of fun, and so that was a great experience as well. Yeah, a lot of fun. I think I animated for any of the Proud Family fans out there, I probably animated a third to a half of the episode where they lose the dog Puff. I think I animated somewhere between a third to a half of that entire episode because I just kept wanting more scenes. Yeah, send me some more. Send me some more. It was so much fun.
And what was it like working on Little Dogs on the Prairie?
Little Dogs on the Prairie, that show was such a combination of cute design and really great writing. I used to always tell people that it had practically Simpsons level writing. And it was just so much fun to work on for that reason too. I really enjoyed that entire process. The company that we worked with was really sweet and a lot of fun to work with. A lot of good memories from that one as well. All those characters, Miss Kitty and everybody. It was such a fun show. The character designs on that were great. Like they nailed it on really fun characters. And again, characters that were really made for a lot of really great expressive action and acting. And that's all you really want is characters that can really emote and you can have a lot of fun with in the drawings. If things get too technical or they're too stuffy, then and if they become a little too realistic, then you're kind of put in a bit of a corner where you're not really allowed to have that much fun with them. But with characters that are very cartoony and very open and expressive in that way, then you're just allowed to run and have fun with them. And yeah, that was a great experience.
And what was it like working on the feature film Anastasia?
Anastasia was huge. That was a huge one for me. The story behind that is of all the time that I was working at Heart of Texas, I was actually also going during the summers to an animation school called Sheridan College, and that was in Canada. Although I'm American, that school is in Canada, so I would go to Canada in the summer to Sheridan College to learn animation. And during my second year there, the studio that made Francesco's Friendly World closed, but the director from that studio was still looking for work and he was looking for assistants. And so when I came back from Sheridan, he contacted me and he had a few different jobs lined up. And one of them was Anastasia. And that was a lot of fun because, of course, that's a Don Bluth, Gary Goldman production. And we all loved All Dogs Go to Heaven and The Secret of Nim and, Land Before Time and American Tail. We all love those movies. So getting a chance to work on Anastasia was such a dream come true because, you can now say that you worked on a Don Bluth, Gary Goldman production. It was amazing. And that movie turned out to be so absolutely beautiful. I was so proud to work on that. And that was probably one of the biggest challenges for me because, again, that's a feature film and it's a Don Bluth production and it's somewhat realistic. So you had to pay huge amounts of attention to detail and to consistency and to the flow of your animation. And they were very, very nice with us. They were very kind and we did I think a bang up job helping them out. But that was a huge moment for me because that's the first time I'd stepped into the feature film world. And we mostly did effects animation, but we handled some we assisted some animation as well. So that was big. That was a biggie.
And what was it like working on the Trix cereal commercial?
Well, we touched on it earlier, but the tricks and Lucky Charms were both a lot of fun. I mean, again, I've been very lucky because I've grown up with Mickey Mouse, so I got to animate him. I've grown up with Alice in Wonderland and Captain and Peter Pan and Dumbo. I got to work on them, and same with Trix Rabbit and Lucky Charms. You grow up with those commercials, and they're part of your childhood. Every Saturday you'd get up to watch cartoons, and you'd see Trix Rabbit just as much as you'd see G.I. Joe or Thundercats or anything else that was going to be on that morning. So Trix Rabbit, working on the Trix commercial was a lot of fun. And again, such frenetic energy in that character that, he'd just go from these low movements to these high movements. And it was so much fun to just to just animate him because everything is just energy. Everything is joy and energy coming from it, just excitement all the time. It was a lot of fun. Loved working on that.
And you worked for PSA Propane.
Yes. Yeah, that was another early one from Heart of Texas Productions. And it was at a time where Texas, I think in general, was trying to push a big uh, pro propane project. It's not easy to say, but yeah, it was really fun. And I still to this day, I still see those commercials for, is it Citgo or it's another car company that has a gas company that has these little stop motion cars, and they still remind me of the characters that we created for that propane commercial. But that was a lot of fun, and again in my early days, so I was doing a lot of in-betweening work and learning at that time how to animate. So I was doing a lot of in-betweening of the cars coming in and going out, and a lot again a little bit of the smoke and the dust kind of affects animation kind of stuff. But again, learning and growing. And I suggest that to everybody. Start with those things and build from it, because at that point you understand everything that goes into the process.
And what about Adventures of Fat Man?
That was fun. That was fun. That was another quick little turnaround that director and I did together. That was a lot of fun. Great little style. So much fun to work with in that way. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was very quick because, as you know, the Weird Al show, it was only partially animated. So it was like a very quick segment within a short show. But yeah, a lot of fun. Great little design style and really quirky animation. It reminded me a lot more of something like Rugrats or something where it's a very interesting style, a very different style. So you kind of had to figure that out first. This isn't like a Disney cartoon, and this isn't like the Tricks Rabbit. This is something else. So you sometimes have to understand that this design has to be approached in a different way when you animate it to do it as a service to it. So that was a lot of fun. And again, it's great to say that, I got to work on the Weird Al show. That's cool. So I'm a big fan of Weird Al in general. He's great. Who who doesn't love Weird Al?
And you worked on a music video called Daylight by David Kushner.
Yes, yes, I did. Just a little bit. And that was a bit of freelance work. Um, at another studio. But yeah, yeah, a lot of fun. It's really great when you get a chance to. A lot of studios will if they're not working on their own thing, will take on other projects for other people. And the really interesting thing about that is you're going to get to see a lot of different styles for a lot of different things. So you may be working on a video game one moment, you might be working on a series the next, you might be working on a commercial or a PSA, and you might be working on a music video. There are a lot of things that I've worked on. I've worked on little bits in a movie that suddenly just went to animation for some reason to tell part of the story. But it's really fun for that because you get this variety of looks and feels, and you also get a variety of tones. Sometimes things are supposed to be for little kids and they're very hyper and happy. And other times they're kind of documentorial and they're going to be kind of somber and they're going to be kind of bittersweet in moments. So it opens up a world of these things and gets you in touch with a lot of different emotional value points in that way, a lot of emotional backgrounds in that way, because you're not going to want to animate everything cute and funny. You're not going to want to animate everything for little kids. You're not going to animate everything for that. You're going to have these other needs with animation. So as you grow and as you understand more, you kind of start realizing that it's more so the approach to the animation than anything else. It's absolutely important that you approach it in that way.
And you worked on Flutter.
Yes, another piece like that that was absolutely a lot of fun to work on. A lot of fun. Again, a different look, a different feel, and for a different need. So again, you go from something like the Tricks Rabbit or a Proud Family to something like that, and it's all about matching the tone.
And you worked on Meet the Pedals.
Wow, you really did your research on this. I'm impressed. Yes, that was another one, and I that was for I believe that's a film, and that's one of the things I was talking about earlier, where he wanted this approach where it was mostly live action, but there were moments in it that he wanted to cut to animation because it would better tell the story. It was a better way of narrating it than just kind of cutting to pictures or cutting to something else in that way. It was more entertaining to cut to animation to discuss that part of his life or part of his background. And it was a lot of fun because again, different look, different feel, very different design style, and also a different meaning behind it. It was more documentarian than anything else. So yeah, you get all these different looks and feels and needs from these things. It's a lot of fun.
All right.
All right.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I would like to say that no matter who you are out there, no matter what background you have, it doesn't matter. Work on it. Work on it. Believe in yourself. There's a lot of people out there that think that they just can't do it because they don't have the resources or they don't have the ability. There's an idea that people are gifted or talented, and that's simply not true. People that actually work in any industry, whether it's music or the comics or animation or whatever it is, people that work in those industries are people that worked at it and believed in themselves. I came from a pretty rough part of town, and I didn't have a whole lot of money when I was growing up. I used to just draw on any piece of paper that I found, and I don't think too many people thought I would get too far, but I believed in myself and I kept at it and I kept working and I was driven to do it. And I don't think I was blessed and I don't think I was gifted. I don't think any of that happens. I just wanted to do it very badly. And I kept working at it and I kept dedicating myself to it and developed a discipline. And I think it really, that's where it comes from. So anyone out there that has that dream of doing whatever it is, again, music, whatever it is, whether it's culinary, you know, sculpting, painting, whatever it is, just keep at it, keep working at it, and you will achieve it.
And don't forget to send me some behind the scenes stuff of
Absolutely. And when I locate that, I definitely will.
Francesco's Freeman World.
Yep.
The footage and the photos.
Anything I can find, I will send to you.
Nice. Stay tuned for more guests coming up. Until next time, peace.
Take care, everybody.